Hi, it's Katrina. Thanks to advances in technology, archaeologists are finding out totally new secrets about ancient artifacts that they've already studied. And there is no better example than the Antikythera Mechanism. Once hailed as the world's first supercomputer, now, well, you'll see. The Antikythera Mechanism. 2,000 years ago, something truly extraordinary was lost to the waves. It wasn't gold or jewels, but a device of unparalleled genius that could track the planets and keep track of time. It was the first analog computer. Corroded and crusted, it was full of gears that held the secrets of the ancient world's most advanced technology. When divers fished it out of an ancient shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901, they didn't realize they were holding what could have been the ancient world's version of a computer. In the 1st century BC, a massive Roman cargo ship was caught in a storm. The ship was over 150 feet long and usually transported grain. But this trip was different. This time it was loaded with treasure from across the Greek world. The ship tried to escape the storm by hiding near Antikythera Island, but it was no use. The ship, along with all of its treasure, sunk. It was lost for almost 2,000 years until the year 1900. That year, another ship was facing the same problem the Roman sailors did all those years ago. There was a huge storm, and they also tried to hide from the storm in the same place. This time, the vessel and its crew were fine, but thanks to destiny, they did discover the wreck. They dove down to check it out and saw that the sea floor was littered with bronze and marble statues. And this discovery kicked off a salvage operation that lasted for 9 months. They found thousands of objects, among them a lump of corroded bronze that was so boring it almost got thrown back into the water. Investigators at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens luckily took another look and discovered that the lump had Greek writing and interlocking gears. Gears from 2,000 years ago. And from then on, the lump became famous. But what was it? What was its purpose? And who could have made such a seemingly complex object so long ago with gears and everything? Scientists have been struggling to answer these questions for years. Now known as the Antikythera Mechanism, thanks to 21st century technology, scientists discovered it was a cutting-edge astronomical tool. CT scans done a few years ago showed it could do all sorts of sky-watching tricks. The machine can track lunar phases, line up planets, calculate solar eclipses, and even sync up Egyptian and Greek calendars. It was estimated to have been made between the late 2nd century BC and early 1st century BC. The complexity and precision of all the gears were unprecedented for its time. The use of gears that connect to other gears wasn't thought to have been used until the Middle Ages, 1,000 years later. But some Greek genius figured it out way before. But who? Researchers believe that the object may have been made by the renowned mathematician Archimedes, or at least greatly inspired by him. The mechanism's construction dates to just after his death, and ancient Roman writer Cicero mentioned a similar device created by Archimedes. Another candidate is Hipparchus. The mechanism's workings are based on the astronomical theories of Hipparchus, which suggests he may have designed or at least contributed to the device. Another theory suggests it was made in an academy on the island of Rhodes, where the Stoic philosopher Posidonius lived. In any case, no one has found a signature on it, so it's kind of impossible to confirm. But you know it was someone smart. A lot of what we know of the mechanism is thanks to British science historian and Yale professor Derek J. DeSoya Price. He did some extensive X-ray and gamma-ray testing on the fragments, and he is the one that discovered the complex gear system and how it could be used as an astronomical calculator. Price's detailed research is what firmly established the Antikythera Mechanism as the world's first known analog computer and revolutionized our understanding of ancient Greek technology. Since his paper came out in the 70s, researchers have been using more and more advanced imaging and analytical techniques to find out more about this device that changed history. It made us look at the ancient world completely differently. There is even the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project, AMRP. In 2005, a group of mathematicians,
Astronomers and historians got together to try to rebuild the entire mechanism layer by layer. The team confirmed 27 gears that Price had found, plus several more. One thing that has stuck out to researchers is a strange, smaller gear on the back of the device. Price had examined this gear and determined it may have had 222 or 223 teeth. AMRP confirmed it was 223, which was a number related to the moon's motion. But now, all of this research has been thrown into question. Some scientists are thinking the device may have done none of those things. None, I say. Can you believe it? But why? A new study submitted on April 1st, 2025, the worst day in the year to publish anything serious, April Fool's Day, is shaking up history. A group of Argentinian researchers digitally recreated the mechanism using modern simulation tools. And they included one detail that is often overlooked by others studying the thing. They focus on the shape of the gear teeth within the device. They are triangle-shaped, funky little suckers that don't always mesh smoothly. In fact, they jam all the time. This new simulation showed that the gears jammed a lot. To make matters worse, every time it jammed, the user would have had to reset the whole thing manually. Kind of like your printer today. They promise the world and then throw a tantrum when you try to print a PDF. The new theory suggests it was a fancy educational model, something built to impress, not to function. Maybe it was the ancient version of a flashy tech demo that never actually gets released. Or maybe it came with a scroll-sized instruction manual that explained how to deal with the jamming gears. Or, prepare to be shocked, maybe it was a toy. A toy? Really? I know, I didn't even want to tell you that. But it's the new researchers that said it, not me. If it was a toy, it might be the best designed toy in human history. Even more impressive than the most complex transformers. Remember trying to get those buggers to fold and crease and bend properly as a kid? Oh, the memories. Anywho, the craftsmanship of the Antikythera Mechanism is next level. This wasn't some half-baked attempt at looking smart. Even if it jammed, it still took serious know-how to create. Precision bronze working, astronomical calculation, and design flair were all involved. If it was just a toy, then it was the Rolls-Royce of useless gadgets. Like if your Etch-a-Sketch was made by NASA. Could it really be a toy? I refuse to believe it. Still, everything is up in the air. Other researchers have argued that after 2,000 years submerged, of course the gears jam. They probably shifted, making the simulation redundant and incomplete. Maybe in its original state, it did work like a charm. Maybe people walked around with a cosmic computer hidden in their togas. In the end, it's still an unsolved mystery wrapped in bronze and barnacles. The Antikythera Mechanism was a masterpiece of ancient tech. Whether it worked flawlessly or suffered a mechanical downfall like a Greek tragedy, it proves that 2,000 years ago, someone looked up at the stars and thought they could build a machine to predict their movements. That ambition, that determination to master the elements, that's the real magic here. So what do you think? Genius invention or a toy? Does it deserve its place as one of the best discoveries in archaeology ever? The Lost Tale of Merlin. You know the wizard, you know the legend, but you don't know this story. Buried beneath layers of stitched parchment, old estate records, and centuries of forgetfulness, something magical stirred in the quiet halls of Cambridge University Library. What was found had to do with Merlin, everyone's favorite Arthurian wizard. 2 missing pages from a rare 13th century Suite Vulgate du Merlin, a medieval sequel to the legend of King Arthur, had been living a double life as the cover of an old property record from Huntingfield Manor. That's like discovering Shakespeare's lost plays lining your grandma's kitchen drawers. The whole thing kicked off in 2019 when then Cambridge archivist Cian Collins was going full Marie Kondo on estate records from the Vanek family of Heveningham. Don't worry, you don't need to remember all these names. Cian spotted a worn cover stitched with parchment that seemed oddly Arthurian. She was getting some really weird vibes from the book and decided to take a closer look. As she looked, it became apparent the language wasn't Latin or Middle English. It was Old French. the most popular medieval courtly language after the 1066 Norman conquest. And then Tian saw the names, really familiar names. Names like Gawain and Excalibur. Ding, 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 she had hit the jackpot.
Suddenly, this wasn't just an old document Jan was expecting. This was a long-lost piece of Camelot.
In came Dr. Irene Fabry Teranchi, the manuscript wizard of Cambridge. She was one of the first to recognize the parchment's true identity. She was so excited that she exclaimed, "It's very much a once-in-a-lifetime experience." In academic terms, that's like yelling, "We found a dragon egg at the top of your lungs." Sadly, the manuscript was too fragile to flip through its pages. Without advanced technology, there was no way anyone would read every last line. So the team turned to CT scanners, multispectral imaging, ultraviolet lights, and 3D modeling. You know, normal Tuesday stuff when you're a scientist. Their goal was to digitally unfurl the pages without touching them, like doing brain surgery on a candy bar without unwrapping the foil. It worked better than anyone could have hoped for, giving the specialists an eye-opening glimpse into the history of Arthur and his court mage Merlin. One page featured a legendary throwdown. Arthur's knight Gawain, Gawain's dad, King Loth, and his brothers are described as facing off against a roster of Saxon kings like Todalus, Moidas, Oriances, and Brandalis. Yes, the names sound like they should be in a metal band, but these were actual Dark Ages kings of Britain. The second page is a scene straight out of an Arthurian rom-com. Picture feast night in Camelot. Queen Guinevere is enjoying her appetizers. Suddenly, in walks the hottest guy anyone's ever seen, dressed in glittery silk and looking like a Renaissance Harry Styles. Spoiler, it's Merlin in disguise, casually working the room as a harpist.
I would love to tell you the rest of the stories, but unfortunately, there were only a couple of pages being used as the book's cover. It's truly remarkable how these pieces of Merlin's tale ended up jammed into a completely unrelated book. This is the core of what makes this discovery so fascinating. How did they even get there? Experts think that around 1275, a medieval scribe in northern France hand-copied a version of the Suite Vulgate. It was one of just 30-something surviving copies detailing the history of Merlin and his buddy Arthur. Over time, the manuscript made its way to England, and by the 1500s, Old French had gone out of style. Readers were more into Sir Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur, which was written in good old English and a lot easier to read while snacking on mutton. There was a problem of what to do with all the outdated French manuscripts. Being a savvy bunch, the people in England recycled them. Pages were torn, folded, and stitched into book covers, boxes, and bindings. Who would have thunk that even 16th century peasants loved DIY? Think of what medieval farmhands would have given for access to Pinterest. Amélie de Blau, the photographer behind the operation, worked with everything from probe lenses to literal mirrors to snap pics of what couldn't be seen by the naked eye. The result was a full virtual model of the manuscript pages, preserved in all their stitched-up glory. Who knows what else is hidden in book covers and bindings from the old days? Think of how many medieval books are kept in countless libraries and museums across the globe. How many of them have illustrations of wizards hiding in their creases? This isn't just cool, it's groundbreaking. The new scientific techniques could help recover dozens of other hidden texts hidden inside covers, spines, and God knows where else. This one is just extra exciting because it's about Arthur and Merlin, who may or may not have existed. According to Dr. Laura Campbell of Durham University, who is no stranger to magical manuscripts herself, this rediscovery proves that Arthurian legends never die. So, while we're here, why don't I just keep the legend going? King Arthur was the gallant British prince who allegedly rallied his troops, fought off Saxon invaders, and had a bromance with a wizard in a funny hat. Camelot, Excalibur, knights in shining armor who definitely skipped leg day because they never got off their horses. Sounds epic, right? But is it too epic? Let's rip off the chainmail and ask the big question historians have been wrestling with harder than Lancelot at a medieval wrestling convention. That question is, was King Arthur a real guy or just a glorified Dungeons & Dragons character?
What historians know for sure is that around 500 AD, there was a real battle at Mons Badonicus. It was basically the Super Bowl of sword fights between Britons and Saxons. A Celtic monk named Gildas wrote about it in the only surviving contemporary source, but he didn't mention Arthur at all. A couple centuries later, a Welsh historian with a flair for drama named Nennius wrote a book about King Arthur. In it, he outlined 12 epic battles that were supposedly fought by the legendary king. The issue is that the battles don't make sense. They happened in wildly different places across time. It would be like if your friend claimed he fought the Nazis, the Confederates, and the dinosaurs. It's not the most convincing story. Years later, in 1066, the Normans conquered England. They brought their love of chivalry and French poetry with them, and that was when Arthur's story took on a life of its own. Geoffrey of Monmouth was the J.R.R. Tolkien of the 12th century. He penned the History of the Kings of Britain, the first full-length Arthur origin story. He threw in Merlin, Queen Guinevere, a sword called Caliburn that was later renamed Excalibur, and lots of medieval action. Geoffrey claimed it was all based on a mysterious Celtic manuscript that no one else except for him had seen. Geoffrey was the first guy in history to say, "Trust me, bro."
Can you tell me what King Arthur's most important mission is in the old stories? There's something he's supposed to find with the help of his knights and his wizard. Come on, I know you know it.
The Holy Grail. Arthur and the Grail go together like peanut butter and jelly. The first story with Arthur and the Grail together was penned by French poet Chrétien de Troyes. He took Geoffrey's version of Arthur and turned him into a spiritually enlightened, quest-hungry legend with divine purpose. By this point, Arthur had become less of a historical maybe and more of a medieval Marvel superhero. So, was he real? Honestly, there's no consensus. Maybe yes, maybe no, maybe based on a real king, maybe totally fabricated by drama-loving French writers. Let me know if you think Arthur was real or not in the comments. And now for a quick break because it's shout-out time. I want to give a big thank you to Kim Weddle and Amit Kumar for supporting this channel. Please let me know what other stories you'd like me to cover in future videos. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. The Mega Mayan Mystery. For centuries, people have walked, built homes, raised families, and grilled tacos on what they thought was just an ordinary hill in southern Mexico. However, this ordinary hill has turned out to be something much more. It's the largest and oldest Maya structure ever discovered, and it was hiding in plain sight. Beneath the soil of Tabasco, the Mexican state, not the hot sauce, there was a nearly 1 mile long monument casually minding its business for about 3,000 years. And no one noticed until now. Enter the archaeological Avengers, Takeshi Inomata and Daniela Triadan, professors from the University of Arizona. Armed not with whips and hats, but laser beams from the sky, they revealed the hidden giant using LiDAR. That is light detection and ranging technology for us. Basically, they flew planes over the forest, zapped it with lasers, and watched the jungle peel back like the world's most satisfying scratch-off ticket. Underneath the jungle was earth-shattering history. This wasn't just another lost city or ancient ruin. Oh no. This was a ceremonial beast about 4,600 feet long. That's about 14 football fields laid end to end. It isn't one structure or one town, but a complex of buildings with 9 wide causeways, artificial reservoirs, and small structures peppered around like architectural sprinkles. All of it is invisible to the naked eye. On the ground, it looked like a gently rolling plateau. Only from the sky does the hill become one of the greatest archaeological mic drops in Mesoamerican history. Now, how old do you suppose this massive artificial structure is? I can tell you for certain that it's older than the lost city of Ceibal, which before now was the oldest Mayan ceremonial center. It's also bigger. This place, recently named Aguada Phoenix, dates to somewhere between 1000 and 800 BC. But for being so old, it has a surprising lack of pyramids. This site boasts what archaeologists call horizontal monumentality. which is a fancy way of saying that the complex is huge but also flat. It's a design pattern that favors rectangular layouts and rows of low mounds, like a giant version of minimalist Minecraft builds. Even weirder is that after scientists scanned the ruins top to bottom, they found no big statues, no evidence of elites, and no thrones made of jaguar skulls. The researchers found 0 sculptures of powerful rulers or divine kings. The only stone carving they uncovered was an animal, and not even a fancy one. It looks like it could have been the ancient Maya version of a squirrel.
Curiouser and curiouser.
This is huge news because it suggests the people who built Aguada Phoenix weren't ruled by some blinged-out emperor barking orders from his obsidian bathtub. They were communal, collaborative, and possibly even egalitarian. There's no strong evidence of social inequality, no dictator demanding human sacrifices before breakfast. Just a whole community coming together to build a ceremonial megaplex the size of a small airport. You have to admit, that's pretty impressive. Inomata himself said it best. You may not necessarily need a well-organized government to carry out these kinds of huge projects. People can work together to achieve amazing results. You're dang right we can. This is such a shocking turn of events because the Maya were always assumed to have kings and god kings and elite priests ruling over the peasants. And they definitely did in a lot of their cities, probably in most of their cities. There is plenty of evidence of kings ruling over the Maya civilization. The Maya even had different kings in different cities, ruling like mayors. In an age where you had to hike across the jungle to visit the closest town, each city had a certain level of autonomy. You know all those temples in Maya cities built by kings? The Tikal Temple was built by Yikin Chan Kawil, while the Temple of Inscriptions in Palenque was built by Kiinich Janab Pakal. But in this one spot, on this one hill, there was peace and freedom from rule, and there was a democracy with no kings. The funny part is that nobody would know any of this if not for scientists attacking the suspicious-looking hill with their modern technology. Where do you think scientists should go next with their LiDAR machines? Mirror, mirror on the wall.
Mirror, mirror on the wall. Wait, what the heck is this mirror doing?
Buried in storage, ignored for decades, then out of nowhere, one of the Cincinnati Art Museum's most overlooked pieces went from being a dust collector to a divine projector. The object in question is a mirror, more specifically, a 15th century bronze mirror that had been chilling in museum storage since forever ago, looking like nothing special until someone hit it with a flashlight and unlocked a 500-year-old optical illusion, one worthy of a Vegas magic show.
This is the real-life magic mirror. It's the real deal. Ancient sorcery mixed with proto-science and a dash of alchemy.
It all started innocently enough. The curator of East Asian art, Hao Mei Sung, was knee-deep in research on magic mirrors when she remembered a strange artifact in the back storage room. It was a bronze instrument that looked suspiciously like the same ancient mirrors she was investigating. These ancient bronze mirrors were all the rage in Japan centuries ago. When lit just right, they reveal hidden images in their reflections. Sounds like something cooked up in a Merlin's basement, right? Except these things are legit historical artifacts made with mind-boggling craftsmanship and 0 modern tools. Hao Mei Sung brought a conservation expert down to the museum storage room, which is jammed full of priceless artwork and forgotten relics, and asked her to shine a focused light on the mirror. The tool of choice? A fancy mirror-illuminating specialty item known as a phone flashlight, because apparently that's all it takes these days to summon a hidden deity.
At first, it was just a shimmer, whisper of texture, but more powerful lighting revealed the full image. A seated Buddha, radiating light like a cosmic disco ball. Not bad for a mirror that had spent decades doing nothing but reflecting dust.
Still not impressed by the mirror's hidden illusion? Then it's time for a mini history lesson. These so-called magic mirrors date back about 2,000 years to China's Han Dynasty. People polished bronze plates until they were reflective, and then worked their artisan voodoo on them. And here's how you can do it yourself at home. First, carve or cast a design into one side of a bronze disc. In the case of the magic mirror in Cincinnati, someone carved a Buddha, but you can carve a smiley face, a cat, whatever you want. On the other side of the bronze disc, simply make minuscule changes in thickness and curvature, so small they're invisible to the naked eye. Then all you have to do is polish the heck out of it until it looks like a normal mirror. Shine a light on it and voila! The hidden design appears in the reflection like a divine Snapchat filter. Western scientists who first encountered these in the 19th century were baffled. Honestly, experts still don't fully understand how ancient craftspeople pulled off these immaculate designs without lasers, apps, or even decent lighting. Sung herself said, no matter how much you can explain theoretically, it all depends on the master who polishes the surface. Translation, it was part science, part sorcery, with a little luck and a lot of skill. Measuring a modest 8.5 inches across, the Cincinnati mirror likely came from a Buddhist temple or a noble household. You know, just quiet, spiritual bling hanging on a wall like it was no big deal. And get this, according to Sung, only a handful of museums in the world even have magic mirrors, especially ones with Buddhist imagery. Among them is the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, meaning that Cincinnati has in its collection one of the rarest Asian artifacts on the planet. The mirror in question officially entered the museum's records in 1961, but there's a decent chance it's been in their possession since much longer. Sung believes this is just the tip of the magical iceberg. She's found dozens of similar mirrors in online auctions labeled as totally normal mirrors. Sung is a bit of a shark on the subject. She has managed to track down a few of these mirrors in online sales. Can you imagine buying something labeled as a vintage bronze mirror for $20 and accidentally unlocking ancient enlightenment? And now for the big question. What everyday object in your house might be hiding a secret? That coffee table? Your grandma's old jewelry box? The mirror you haven't cleaned since 2020? Go ahead, look at yourself. What's the worst that could happen? Seriously though, this is an awesome discovery because it shows that even museums don't always know what they have in storage. Sometimes they have magical items and don't even know it. Now go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Unlocking the secrets of human evolution. Have you ever wanted to know why you can have dairy and others can't? With each new advancement in technology, scientists have to go back and retest things they thought they already knew everything about. Sort of like how DNA technology is being used to solve cold cases from the 70s and 80s. I'd like to talk about the biggest cold case of all, human evolution, and how with new technology, old bones are revealing even older secrets. Long before DNA tests could tell you you're 12% Scandinavian and 3% disappointed, the real story of human evolution was quietly buried in African soil, wrapped in ancient bones and completely unreadable until now. Thanks to a high-tech tag team of genome sequencing, bone fragments, and scientists who never quit, we are finally starting to decode the ultimate origin story. You've probably never heard of mitochondrial Eve before. Few people have. Mitochondrial Eve is the name that scientists gave to the genetic matriarch of the human race, which is to say, everyone alive today can trace their DNA to this woman. She lived in Africa somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000 years ago. Forget about ancient mother goddesses worshipped by the Egyptians and Mesopotamians. Mitochondrial Eve really was the original mother, the mom of literally everybody. And although scientists say she wasn't the only woman alive, she was the one whose genetic material has survived all the way to the 21st century. This tidbit of information comes from the study of mtDNA, which is passed down through mothers like heirloom Tupperware. It's handy, but also limited. mtDNA gives you a sliver of the story, like reading the first chapter of a 700-page book and calling it a day. To really understand how humans evolved, spread, and diversified, scientists needed the whole genome. The problem is that DNA doesn't age well, especially in hot, humid Africa. It's like trying to preserve a popsicle in a sauna. To crack the code, in came Dr. Matija Hadyniak, molecular biologist and one of the brains behind Origin, an EU-funded project based at the Francis Crick Institute in London. Along with a crew of archaeologists, paleontologists, and museum pros, Origin's mission is to reconstruct African prehistory using ancient DNA analysis. And they are crushing it, one ancient molar at a time. Scientists are using new technology on old bones and old teeth to reconstruct a new, more accurate version of evolution itself. With cutting-edge genome enrichment tools, the team is extracting DNA from the tiniest bone fragments and fossilized teeth. Then they match the DNA to modern humans to map out ancient migrations, population shifts, and those juicy intergroup interactions scientists call genetic mixing, but it could be considered ancient Tinder.
One of the more shocking revelations has to do with milk. Turns out many of our most basic human traits are evolutionary cheat codes passed down from ancient Africans,
like the ability to digest milk, aka lactase persistence. Most mammals lose this trait after infancy, meaning they can only digest milk while they're babies. But somewhere between 3,000 and 7,000 years ago, African farming communities developed a mutation that let them break down lactose like champs. This allowed them to drink cow's milk, which meant more calories for better survival. This wasn't just nutritional luck, it was a selective advantage, and it spread like wildfire through populations that relied on herding. This was evolution in action. One mutation that allowed one guy to drink milk was so important that it spread through the rest of the human population. And today, many people can drink milk, but there are still lactose-intolerant people. Their genes are still trying to catch up. Dr. Pontus Skoglund, who supervises Origin, emphasized the importance of tracing this mutation's roots. He explained that if scientists can figure out when and where these mutations appeared, they can better understand how humans adapted and sometimes even suffered just to survive. I love talking about this stuff because it's all about understanding how you and I came to be, why we look the way we do, how we metabolize food, respond to a disease, and migrate in a crisis. It's about seeing Africa not just as the origin of humanity, but as a dynamic, evolving continent that shaped our entire history. It's a story still being written one molecule, one mutation, and one ancient tooth at a time. Mesopotamian artifacts unlock the secrets of writing.
It was a tiny click that changed everything.
The dust of ancient Mesopotamia clung to every crack in the ruins. Beneath the baking sun, archaeologists crouched over clay tablets older than the pyramids, their eyes scanning the fossilized fingerprints of bureaucrats long dead. But this wasn't about treasure or tombs. This was about writing, and about determining how humans went from doodling goats to inventing contracts and blogging. In the ancient ruins of Uruk, the Mesopotamian metropolis that practically invented Mondays and paperwork, scientists found 6,000-year-old cylinder seals. These are cylindrical-shaped tablets that were engraved and then rolled across wet clay as a means of writing. You thought ink and the quill was primitive? Try rolling a paper tube in mud and using it to write your thesis. Or try making a grocery list using only emojis. That's basically what the Sumerians were doing in Uruk 6,000 years ago. The writing itself is known as proto-cuneiform. Now, I should mention that cylinder seals have been uncovered since the first archaeologist put his shovel in the Sumerian sands. But now, armed with new technology, a team from the University of Bologna, featuring Professor Silvia Ferrara, found that the ancient practice of using cylinder seals is more than just a quirky way to stamp your name on things. These strange tools are the missing link between pretty pictures and full-blown writing. And without writing, where would we be? The seals were etched with repeating patterns of everything you can imagine. I'm talking baskets, shapes, random animals. These were like hieroglyphs, but a little different. Each symbol represented something, either a name or an object. Scientists aren't entirely sure how it worked. What they do know is that around 3000 BC, these cylinder seals evolved. In the city of Uruk, located in what is now southern Iraq, something clicked into place. Primitive symbols morphed into an actual written language. Proto-cuneiform transformed into normal cuneiform. Ferrara and her team published their new findings in the journal Antiquity and dropped a historical bombshell. They identified direct graphic and conceptual links between pre-writing seal designs and actual proto-cuneiform signs. Think of it as tracking how a doodle of a cow became a symbol that meant you owe me 3 cows and must pay by Friday. These designs were functional symbols tied to real-life logistics. They were used in conjunction with agriculture, textiles, and pottery transport. Merchants used this new form of writing to keep track of sales and figures, so that proto-cuneiform soon became the backbone of the ancient economy, and afterwards, cuneiform took its place. Today, more than half of proto-cuneiform signs still haven't been cracked. It's not hopeless, but it's definitely a major challenge, even for the brightest code breakers in the world. But now, thanks to this new seal-sign connection, scientists might just have a Rosetta Stone-style breakthrough on their hands. If they can finally figure out what the cylinder seals say, archaeologists could break the case wide open on Uruk, the Sumerians, Mesopotamia. The possibilities are endless. Ferrara is determined to make sense of this period in history, which is awesome because it was one of the most pivotal moments for our species. The team called the evolution of writing in Sumer a conceptual leap in human thinking. It was a moment where image turned into information, and prehistory crossed into history. Kind of like when you stopped sending cryptic Snapchat streaks and started using full sentences and texts. It's growth, people. Every time you sign a form, send a text, leave a snarky comment on a YouTube video, just keep in mind that the Sumerians and their bizarre cylinders paved the way for chatroom trolls. So what do you think? Do you think writing came from art or accounting? Did writing begin as fun drawings, or was it straight to business? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching! Which of these historical bombshells did you love hearing about the most? Be sure to subscribe and let me know what other topics you'd like to see in future videos. See you tomorrow. Bye!